All right, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning and good afternoon to those attending today's webinar titled Wildfire Mitigation, DSO Vegetation Management Practices in Portugal. My name is Jess McDonald, and I'm a manager at the Edison Electric Institute in the International Programs Department, and I will be the host for today's webinar. Before we get things started, I wanted to quickly cover some housekeeping items for the webinar, and then I will turn it over to our speakers and we'll get today's presentation going. So just very quickly on the housekeeping items, you'll see on the slide in front of you that questions can be submitted using the chat feature, and the chat feature is located on the right-hand side of your screen. And also, as an important note, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be shared on our EEI International YouTube channel within about a week of today's presentation. And lastly, if you're interested in learning more about EEI International programs, please email us at internationaleei.org. You'll see the email up there on the screen, and you'll start receiving some of our communications, including notices of our upcoming webinars. So we're very excited for today's presentation featuring 3 speakers from EDP in Portugal. And without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and introduce them. So we have Ricardo, Messias, who is a board advisor for the relationship with stakeholders in the context of forest management. And he's been with EDP since 2001, holding several roles across the lab department, distribution planning, and business continuity. Ricardo is joined by Rui Manuel Martins, who is a manager of tests and trials at EDP Labelec, where he works with asset management tests, overhead line inspection, electric tests, and insulating materials and analyses. And they're joined by Artur Andre, who is the team leader at EDP for thermographic inspections, and he's been with EDP in this role since 1990. So we're very excited to have you all with us today and to learn a little bit more about the wildfire mitigation practices and technologies you guys are implementing. This is a very important and very relevant topic for our industry today, and something that has been the focus of many of our members at EEI. And so, Ricardo, I will now turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, everyone, to join us. I'm always open to any questions that you have. So let's get started. So EDP is a worldwide company. You see there gas, talking about gas, but right now we are focusing our assets in electricity. And we started in Portugal, where we are where we have the responsibility for the distribution grid. So in these responsibilities, we have low voltage conceptions and high and medium voltage conception. So, and our mission with these responsibilities is from planning to operation the electricity network, to provide market support, including metering. So when you see our grid, we are one of the countries in Europe with more percentage of aerial grid, so overhead grid. Almost 80% of our grid is overhead. And when you see the map in your left, you see that the map is all blue. That all blue is our medium voltage and high voltage grid. Is not there the low voltage grid. So in high voltage and medium voltage, we have 68,000 kilometers, and we have more 110,000 kilometers of low voltage aerial grid. Portugal have some characteristics that make the management of this overhead grid more challenging. And one of these challenge, is that more than 90% of the territory is private, and the second challenge is that that territory is very fragmented, so have a lot of properties. So, and with that, we have more than 28,000 kilometers in forest environment, and that is almost 10 times, is more than 10 times the perimeter of Portugal. So a big challenge to manage. In your right side, you have a map that is priority municipalities. That is something defined by the government, and those municipalities is where the fire risk is higher this year. So every year we have a map like that, and we do some reinforcement in grid surveillance in that priority municipalities. So what are our main responsibilities related with ignition mitigation? So since ever, we have what is defined in legislation like as protection zones. And so in those protection zones is areas where we can make works to ensure the distance between vegetation and power lines. So in medium voltage, we have 15 meters where we can make works. In high voltage is 25 meters. And in that line, we must ensure 2.5 meters of distance between the lines and the vegetation. So the responsibility of EDP is to ensure that distance is maintained, but the responsibility to ensure and not to conserve plantations which could adversely affect the electric lines is from landowners. The problem is that we will see next slide the restriction about that to ensure those distance. In the right side, there is another responsibility. So in the left responsibility since ever, since we have electrification. In the right side is something that comes in 2006. So in 2006, there was legislation about wildfire forest defense, and in that regulation, when the municipalities or there is a local interest, we EDP distribution have to maintain lane where we do full management. So in the left side is about distance and is security of the grid. In the right side is about full management under the lines. And the difference is that in the left side is in all the lines. So there is the law says that we must monitor the lines in periodical years. In the right side is not all the electrical lines, is where there is interest of municipal or local interest. So these lines in the right side, they have two functions. One is to reduce the effects of wildfire. So these are the functions that they are stated in the regulation. We will see what we think about it. So the first one is reduce the effects of wildfire, and the second is isolated potential ignition sources. And this applies not only to electrical grids, but also to roads and other types of infrastructure. So there is a little note there that we have different type of fuel management lines. So these under the power lines, they are called secondary fuel management lines, and there is another one that is responsibility of the state that they call primary network, and that primary network have the function of reducing the length covered by the large fires and to allow and facilitating the fighting intervention. So this is a primary network responsibility, is not a responsibility of the secondary network. So what are the main problems in both? So in the protection zones, the main problem, there are three, and the first one is not clear in the legislation, the penalties for the landowners if not fulfilled their responsibilities. The second one is the process to enter in private properties. So as I said, more than 90% of the land is private, so it's complex and slow to enter in private properties. And we in Portugal have one thing that makes it more difficult, is that we don't have yet a national landowner registration. So there is a lot of lands that there is not registered who is the owner. There is registered, but is still in paper and is not easy to get who is the owner. The last difficulty is that outside the intervention area, so outside the 50 meters or outside the 25 meters in high voltage, we cannot make any intervention. And there is trees that are higher than our grid, and when there are extreme weather events, they fall over the line. So that is the third problem. Relating the fuel management lines, we have there three main problems also. The first one and the second one are related with the functions that theoretically they should fulfill. And so we, in last wildfires, there is no protection. That lines didn't protect the lines, so they melted. Also, we don't think that they are isolating any potential ignition source. From the opposite, the requirements about distance between the tree tops is something that makes that is more solar exposure of the soil. And as you most know, the fire starts always in the soil, so is not in the treetops, and so with more solar exposure, they are more dry, and whereas when there is something that could be potentially ignition, the probability of get a fire is higher. The third problem is at biodiversity level. The current requirements for full management favor the rise of invasive species, and some of these invasive species even grow higher than the trees that we had there before the cleaning of the full management cleaning. So since ever, EDP Distribuição focus in getting the best practice, both in terms of equipment preventive maintenance and in terms of tree distance inspection. So since 25 years ago, 94, we started to do the thermographic inspection. That is something that the second part of the presentation will focus. And so we have 25 years of experience in this. And since 2006, we started doing the laser measures based in LiDAR technology. And there is other types of improvements, like in last year we development of expedite channel for everyone can report vegetation proximity to the lines through our app. And this year we started also some pilots with satellite image, both to detect vegetation proximity and to get evidence of the contractors' providers' execution of the works in the territory. So this is my part of the presentation. Right now, Jessica, I think the questions are in the end, right?
Yes, we'll have time for questions at the end. Rui, and we'll start with the second half of the presentation and then loop back with questions at the end.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. To Labelec. Labelec is a company that belongs to EDP. That is a group of laboratories and engineering centers. So we have at this moment 8 laboratories from the environment, high voltage metering, electrical and mechanical tests, and we have an area that are dedicated to overhead line inspection using helicopters or drones. We have all the certification and all of our laboratories are accredited by the ISO 17025 standard. And on the right side, we have our divisions. So our areas is not important for this meeting. Labelec is a very old company, and it was completely focused on the EDP group problems. In 2013, EDP decided to open the door, and if we do the work for EDP, we can sell the service for outside, so not EDP companies. And at this moment, 40% of our work is done for outside of the group. Our service goes from the substations to wind turbines, boilers, generators, meters, every equipment of the electrical grid. And now we go to the overhead line inspection. So our model is this that is presented. So we have a flight service provider. So the helicopter is not ours. We go to the market and we buy the service. The sensors belong to us. We have a gimbal with 4 sensors, infrared inspection, for infrared inspection, UV for corona, and a video and a photo camera. And we have another system, a LiDAR system, to measure distance. The data are analyzed by us, and we perform about 25,000 kilometers of power line per year, focused in medium voltage and high voltage. This is a photo of one helicopter that we use. The left side we can see the gimbal with the 4 sensors, and the white box is the LiDAR that is open to the left. So our flight is very close to the line, 15 meters above the line. Why? The reason is because our technician, they should see all the visual anomalies that can be seen from the helicopter. So every day of the year we have the helicopter working for us with 2 technicians, Labelec technicians, and the pilot, of course. Some examples of things that we can detect. Hot points with the infrared inspection. The first picture. The others, we can see some insulators that are broken. Another anomaly in the insulator connection in this side, and the 2 pictures below are corona problems. And some examples of LiDAR measurements. So it's a 3-dimension picture. Where we can measure the distance between the line and the vegetation or other obstacles. So this process is not completely automatically, but it's almost all of them, but we can check. And this is a very important slide to show our story and to know what we are doing. So from '94, we start using helicopter with infrared camera and visual observation. In 2006, we installed the first LiDAR sensor. In 2012, we installed the UV sensor, and after from the last year, we start using UAV drones with the same type of sensors. At this moment, we are using helicopter and drones. And the drone is focused on more detailed inspection and some short circuits and short lines, not long lines. Long lines are done by the helicopter. Some detail from our hardware. So the left, the gimbal with the 4 sensors. The other is the LiDAR system. Our laser, we can have more than 60 laser echoes per square meter. So it's enough, complete enough to this kind of mission, and we can even detect the kind of vegetation or other analysis. Some detail from the UAV hardware, where we have 2 platforms. 2 is a commercial DJI UAV drone, so it's not a product that were developed by us. It's industrial or commercial platforms. The pictures about the visual inspection, photo and video, Sony and DJI. The right picture is the infrared camera, a FLIR and DJI camera, and the LiDAR that you use is the cylinder Velodyne sensor. As a service provider, we receive from the EDP distribution a list of lines that we should inspect, and we have some documents that are the criteria that we can use. So, for visual observation, we have a list of anomalies that we can detect and share the list of the coordinates, the points where the anomalies are to be solved. We have 3 types of anomalies, 3 types of criticity of the anomalies. So big or strong anomalies are classified by A type, the medium B, and C for the less problematics. About thermographic, a difference of temperature higher than 40 Celsius degrees are classified as A type, so we should go as soon as possible to solve the problems. About the distance, is quite the same. We have a list of distance that we can analyze and define each anomaly as the level of criticity. For example, the N, it means that we should go during this year. The N plus 1. So we don't need to go this year, we can go next year. And the other N plus 2, we have to be careful, but we have time to solve the problem. And for each voltage level, we have a distance. I think, for example, for the medium voltage 15 kilovolts, the minimum DN is 5 meters, I think.
Yes.
Yes, 5 meters. Okay, some examples of LiDAR. The video, the Google Earth, some information that we put in our report, and the LiDAR information where we can see the lines, the red lines, and the vegetation, and the corridor where the lines are passing. More examples, here the insulators that are broken and wires. So the line is with some wires broken. There more information with the distance. Here the distance it is 2 meters and 70 centimeters. So it's lower than 5 meters. So for us is a critical anomaly. So we should go as soon as possible. More example. This picture shows another type of analysis that we can perform, and we are doing, is to estimate in this picture, the red one. We should go to this side to cut the vegetation this year. The yellow, we don't have the problem now, but in 2 years we will have the problem. And for 5, 10, and 15 meters, so we can estimate the rate of growth of the vegetation and estimate on when we should go to the place to cut the vegetation. So, in conclusion, the EDP considers the overhead line inspection that are fundamental to guarantee power quality and reduced risk. The aerial inspections are a consolidated methodology with good results and good performance. There are a lot of sensors in the market. We think that is a good practice to have good sensors. So we are working since '94, with the helicopter and overhead line inspection. The last 7 years with 4 inspections at the same flight and the LiDAR, UV, infrared, and visual inspection. In 2000, here is not correct. In 2015, we started a drone project. The first phase of the project, it was focused on the drone platform. We try to develop our own drone platform. In 2018, we decided to focus on the data analytics and the sensors, data inspection. And we evoked 2 platforms from the market, and we evoked new sensors, and it's our focus now. Our actual challenge is data analytics, for what we are doing at this moment, and the more develops in the vegetation grow, the rate of grow, and these kind of things. Okay, and it's done, so we complete the presentation. We are able to answer your questions, of course.
Thank you, Ricardo, Rui, and Artur for this presentation. I mean, EDP is doing such great work on getting these technologies out there and leveraging them for wildfire and mitigation. And so we have quite a few questions sort of working through both the mitigation side of, more about the technologies that you guys are using, and then also some questions on sort of more on the response rather than the mitigation. But to kick us off with questions, the first one that has come in is for you, Ricardo, looking at the challenge that you mentioned earlier on about the amount of private property and sort of the distribution lines that cut through them, and how EDP is working to make sure that the trees are not going to fall over into the power lines if there's any sort of weather event or for wildfire prevention. So the question is, does EDP have any right-of-way programs that you guys are working on to engage with customers about the importance of making sure that there aren't any trees close to the power lines?
So right now we have several associations, both from forest properties and forest producers, and but they are a lot more than in Portugal. We must have more than 250 associations, but they are these associations are aggregating federations, and there are 6 federations. And right now we are trying to make some partnership with these federations, so we can make the properties aware about this responsibility, and also to be more easy to identify who is the owner, because these federations are in the territory. They know much time, and a lot of times they know better who is the landowner, and through this we are trying to make easy our works. Nevertheless, sometimes even when we identify the owner, and even when we go there with the police, sometimes because the legislation is not very clear, sometimes we are not able to do the works. So we are trying to, right now we already propose a lot of legislation change, and hopefully in the next month we will be able to clarify the responsibility of all the stakeholders, and this way to make it easy to do the interventions.
Okay, great. And sort of building on that, I saw on one of the slides, I think it was Ricardo during your presentation on slide 7, there is an app that you guys have developed where I guess its customers can report vegetation proximity to the power lines. Would you be able to just talk a little bit more about that, how it was developed, the applications for it, and sort of how it's being used today?
So everyone can download the app, and it is both in Portuguese and is in English, so it's free. So later we can share the link. And first, that app started to the customer, gives the metering of the meter, and then later we improved that with this function that everyone can get a photo and the coordinates of the place and some kind of information that then gets in our systems, and we send a team to go there to see if it's really a imminent risk, or if you have some time to do the work, or even if it's already identified in Labelec helicopter readings. So, but mostly the problem here is that in the high voltage and medium voltage, we can monitor through the helicopter flights, but we have all the 110 kilometers of low voltage, and that we also do inspection. Nevertheless, is something that because of the length and because we cannot do helicopter flights or other kind of more automatic work, is more difficult because we must do the inspection through teams go there and go to every kilometer of the line. So in the low voltage that is not in the middle of the forest, usually is in the roads. Everyone, if sees some kind of interference of vegetation, can report through our app.
So that's really helpful, I think, for customers to be able to engage with you guys directly to sort of report, where they see if there are any risks, like on their property or close to it. So how, how many customers, and I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, Ricardo, have downloaded the app so far?
Downloaded the app. I don't have the number, but we have 6 million clients, and I think that almost 2 million already have the app. And
wow.
In the last year, we have average of 600 vegetation reports through the app.
It seems to be very valuable. That's great. And so I will go to a question for Rui and Artur, and this is sort of looking at the slide that you had up, the timeline. I think it's slide 21 for you guys, that looks at sort of, looking back since 1994 and then looking ahead 2018 on for the overhead line inspections. There's a question about sort of your scope moving forward, 2019 and ahead. What sort of technologies do you guys think you'll be leveraging, whether you'll be using unmanned aircraft systems more often, or sort of what's in the future for you guys when it comes to technologies for overhead line inspections?
This is Artur, Jessica, and we are now focusing on developing the operations with drones. As we said before, they are not intended for long lengths of power lines. They are more intended to small stretches of power lines and checking of the vegetation control that has been performed by our service providers, and we are starting to use the LiDAR on the drone, and we are getting the first results, and we are analyzing them and trying to make them reasonably useful for the operation, because we know the LiDAR on the drone is not as good, is not as accurate as the LiDAR on the helicopter. But we are looking forward to have very good results with the drone inspections, either in visual, thermographic, and LiDAR inspections. And but we are facing them as a complementary service for the inspections that we perform with the helicopters. Okay. And we are also focusing on automatic data analysis, because we gather a lot of images from the drone, while on the helicopter those images are selected by the operators on board. When we are using the drone, we have sets of images along the power line, and we have to analyze a lot of data in the office. So we are looking forward to have some kind of good data analysis and image analysis system that will help us with this input of data and images.
Okay. Yeah, I know that there are a lot of companies around the globe, electric companies, that are exploring right now the use of unmanned aircraft systems for applications such as overhead line inspections. And it would be good, to know from you guys, do you plan on using these drones for beyond visual line of sight, or is it right now only within visual line of sight?
Well, we are limited by the legislation to use it on the visual line of sight. But we are hoping to have some kind of operation with fixed-wing drones. And, of course, it will be a more complex operation because it will require the reservation of aerial space in certain areas where the drone will be flying. But we think that it might gather a good deal of information, more than we are able to do now with the rotary wing drones, which are limited in time of operation and also on the need to operate them within the visual line of sight.
Okay. And then this question is sort of, anyone can answer it, but it's more on the response side of things when it comes to if there is a wildfire, how EDP would coordinate with local or government partners sort of in the response efforts to that.
So in some European countries, there is more integration with these kind of works and the private entities. I know countries where they have done LiDAR scanning of all the country, and that is very useful because you get all kind of types of devastation and it's more easy than to, for example, know the growth rate of devastation if you know what is there. And so in here in Portugal we don't have yet that kind of cooperation. Nevertheless, we are trying with the civil protection, getting some cooperation, because even it's not only with the civil protection, it's with all the authorities that have teams in the territory, because they are near the lines. They know where the vegetation problems have the most are more in danger for the lines. So we are trying to create some partnership with everyone to get this problem solved, because today in Portugal there was in the last decade a lot of people that leave the interior of the country and came for the urban areas. So we have a problem about all the abandoned areas that some years ago were agricultural lands. So they are not a problem for the power lines. And right now, because the people are not there anymore, they are a problem because in a few years, the vegetation gets control of those lands that they are no more of agriculture use. So,
Okay.
I don't know if
yeah, no, you answered the question. Thank you. So that is sort of all the questions that we have for you guys. But I know that this topic is something that our U.S. and international members are very interested in, particularly, continuing to exchange various technologies or strategies when it comes to wildfire mitigation, preparedness, and response. So we look forward to continuing to work with all of you and, for those on the line, answering any additional questions that you may have. So please, if you have other questions and want to continue the conversation, please email us at international@eei.org. And as I said earlier on, the presentation file and a recording of the webinar today will be available within about a week. So thank you to all of you from EDP for speaking, Ricardo, Rui, and Artur, and we really appreciate your time and for the knowledge that you've shared with all of us here today on EDP's leadership in this area. So thank you, and thank you all for attending the webinar.